Everybody, welcome back to Video Episode Tarek in our continuing series, Sega Racing Renaissance, where we review every single mainline arcade release Sega racing game in a retrospective fashion. And today I got a hard one to talk about because that is Ferrari F355 Challenge. Now I'm not going to say this is not a good game because it is a highly accomplished racing sim released to arcades that looks absolutely spectacular on Sega NAOMI hardware. What I'm going to say is I've never once been able to figure out how in the hell you actually play this game. Before we get too far involved though, if you do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. Give me enough money and I will buy my own Ferrari and race it on camera. That's just a joke. Everyone thinks I get rich off this channel, and I will tell you right now, that is in fact not the case. What is the case is that Ferrari F355 is an absolutely beautiful game. This sunset, this course, the models of actual licensed Ferraris look spectacular. But go ahead and take a look at the bottom left hand corner of the screen because you're going to see there's 4 different driving assists on: traction control, anti-lock brakes, automatic braking system, and whatever SC stands for I have forgotten at this point in time. But I will tell you, without all 4 of those on, I can barely play this game. With all 4 of them on, I still pretty much suck. Now, I'm not going to sit here and blame the game on my poor performance. Not everyone can be amazing at every single game, and when you play and talk about as many games as I do, if I spent the time to quote-unquote get good at all of them, I'd have absolutely no time for anything other than playing video games. But that's what confuses me about Ferrari F355 Challenge. It's not an arcade game, it's a sim, but it still perplexes me to this day. It does not matter how much I practice, it doesn't matter how much I try to lead the lines of the course, I still just constantly get like 7th or 6th position, or I run out of time on the course. This is a difficult game, and I am playing with a pedal and wheel set to try to make it easier on myself, and even with that, with force feedback going on, I still struggle with it. But you'll see there, that is not me taking the corner slow. The AI is taking the corner equally slow. This is not the type of game where you're going to be going full speed the entire race. If that's what you're looking for from a Sega Arcade Racing game, Outrun 2 or Scud Race have your back, and I absolutely love both of those games as well. I understand when a game is not made for me. If you're a sim arcade racing fan, you probably absolutely love this game, and if you are, leave me a comment down below and tell me how to better understand what I am doing, because that is what I struggle at. Even at a straightaway, I get bumped from an AI player, and I just absolutely get thrown into the wall. But now what I can say about this game is apparently the physics are quite realistic, and it definitely feels like you are driving a real vehicle. You're not going to just be throwing this Ferrari around a corner. If you go into a corner too fast, you're going to take that tail end of the car out from underneath you and just slide completely. And you'll see here, just even getting this turn, it is very twitchy and very reactionary, but that is obviously how something like a Ferrari actually drives. This is not a family sedan, it's not an SUV. Even though I own a fast car, it's nowhere near something like this. I could drive my personal vehicle around this course much better than I could a Ferrari, and that is because you need to learn the vehicle. And obviously, being F355 Challenge, you get all of one car to drive. Sure, it might be a different color, but you're going to be behind the wheel of one vehicle, and you're going to be driving that through all of the courses. But all of the courses are basically modeled after real-world places, and again, and that sunset in the background just looks amazing. But let's move on to another course here, and we'll talk about the menu, because you can do practice or guided mode or race. This game has practice modes where all it really wants you to do is learn the course before you even start it. That makes total sense in a console setting, but in the arcade I can't imagine tons of people putting in quarters just to practice a course with no other cars on it where you get hints on how to be better. It is a very curious design decision, but of course that is what the developers that made this game wanted to do. This is not a mistake it's this difficult. It's not a mistake it's this realistic. If you read interviews when they were making this game, it's 100% what they were going to do, and they 100% nailed that goal of making this a very realistic driving game. I will say the soundtrack is pretty funny. It's like 80s classic rock, but kind of made up. So go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds, and I'll come back and talk more about how I'm confused. But enjoy. I mean, that's definitely an interesting song choice, and this entire game is an interesting choice, but it was developed by Yu Suzuki, and his entire goal was to make a realistic driving game, and that is 100% what you have here. Now, I am doing this in the single screen configuration, but there was a deluxe cabinet that has 3 screens, so you can look left and right and see more of the playfield at once. Now, I did get that emulating, but trying to get it captured is an absolute mess of an experience. If I get it going one day, maybe I'll do a video on it, but do know that you can play this game in ultra-wide as well if you so configure it properly. But basically, Yu Suzuki had been developing arcade racing games for so long, he wanted to make the perfect game. He wanted to make a real driving simulator, and that is what F355 Challenge is. This is probably like really racing a vehicle. Now, I've never raced a vehicle on a course. I've done it on a highway sometimes when I'm in a hurry, but I would be really curious to drive an actual Ferrari F355 and see how well they handle compared to this game. And it was really difficult to even start to make this video. I almost skipped this entry completely, but I felt like for the completionist in me talking about Sega Arcade Racing games, there was no way I couldn't do it, and I really thought long and hard to talk about this game. And my opinion on it is a highly accomplished game that looks absolutely beautiful in motion, that has a highly realistic physics engine, and it is one that I am never going to be good at. And I can just basically leave this game behind and say, you know what, to somebody this is probably their favorite Sega racing game ever made. It's just not for me. But do leave me that comment down below and tell me if this is your favorite one, because I really want to hear people's opinions and feedback on this game, so maybe I can better understand it. Because I've watched tutorials, I've read different articles about how to control the cars, and while I start getting a little bit better, stuff like this just getting spun around and stopped means that I'm never going to see that checkered flag. In all of the Sega Arcade Racing games I've ever played, this is the only one in which I've never actually won a race. But that doesn't mean I don't come back from time to time to try to do it. And you will see here, not that it matters because this is emulation, but if you were in the arcades, you could save your data to your visual memory unit and bring it home. It says not to pull out. That's probably bad advice, but you know, do with that what you will. But let's move on to another course. You can see we're just racing in novice mode. There is an intermediate mode as well, and you can go to intermediate mode and turn off all of those driving assists. When you get to that point in the game, all my car does is spin around like it is on ice. And I'm really curious. I have watched some playthroughs of people winning this game with all of those off. But if you are good at this game, how long did it take you to learn that? And it's just that thing. I also don't really love Gran Turismo. I think it's a pretty game, I think it's a fun game, but I am 100% on the arcade physics side of arcade racing games. If any of this had an arcade release, calling it an arcade game as far as the gameplay style is concerned is completely inaccurate. But that's the fun thing about talking about games like this. I don't have to not like it, I can just say it's not for me. But I cannot deny the fact that this running via NAOMI emulation, I do have a real NAOMI, I've just never bothered to set this game up with controls because I don't love it that much, looks spectacular. That background, it is hard to believe this runs on the Dreamcast or NAOMI, and I will say that this is the best looking version of the game. This can rival, if not beat, anything the PlayStation 2 was putting on screen at that moment in time. It is just a gorgeous game, and for that reason alone, I do love playing it because I am never bored of what I'm looking at on screen. And I will say this now, and I'm sure I'm going to see some comments down below, but just remember, an opinion is an opinion. You don't need to be rude if you don't agree with it. I think the Dreamcast version of this game is much better looking than the PlayStation 2 version. If I had to pick one version to play, it's going to be Dreamcast all day long. But Ferrari F355 Challenge is just a really interesting game because it is made to fill a niche that Sega was not working on whatsoever. You had stuff like Daytona, Daytona 2, Scud Race, Wild Riders, Crazy Taxi. Those are all very hard arcade-oriented games. And I understand someone like Yu Suzuki had worked on so many racing games for Sega, wanting to do something entirely new, and that is where this game is born from, the desire to make a racing game that felt like you were really in the car they were talking about. And that means that while it is a highly, incredibly accomplished game, it is just not the type of game for me. But of course it's a retrospective, and I had to talk about the game, and you'll see at least on this course, I was able to finish. But leave me that comment down below, tell me what you think of the game. I'll be back next Wednesday with more racing and videos throughout the week. But this game, it's kind of hard. Bye bye.